Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So today's upload is going to be a video about the long range, what's coming up in the long range, the temperatures, the precip, everything of that sort. If you like this channel, consider subscribing below, consider supporting it by subscribing and liking the video. I do all sorts of weather related content. If you've been watching me for a while, but you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so, and if this is your first video, check out the channel. We do all sorts of weather related stuff. So overall, the weather long range weather forecast looks extremely complex. I mean, holy cow, we're not even looking at a defined pattern, really. I mean, this Climate Prediction Center, of course, took this occasion to go all out warm on the 6 to 10, 8 to 14 day outlook. But, I usually like to look at their forecasts, as usually they at least have some truth to them. It's never 100%, but neither is mine. But I wouldn't even say there's this 50% accurate half the time. But, there is some signals from the European model that, again, I already made a video about this, that are showing, the European is showing ridiculous, I mean, possibly record-breaking cold temperatures across the U.S. Yes, cold, not warm, which is very interesting, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But that's just really the European. The GFS and GFS ensembles aren't showing too much of anything either. They're more showing a neutral pattern. I mean, literally, not just in the neutral, in the ENSO in the Southern Pacific, just literally just a nothing occurring pattern. Not too hot, not too warm, more maybe on the warmer side than on the colder side. So, it will just have to take this one by one. So let's look at the GFS, and I hate making these videos because the conclusions are really hard to draw from these videos. Whether Arctic attack is coming, or a heat wave is on its way, very warm December. It's looking as of right now that December, won't be as cold as November. It may be on a warmer side, but it's tough to say. It is really one of the toughest ones we've had in a while. So let's just take a look at this one by one. So we're looking at 18Z Monday, December 16th. That was at the end. Let's look at the storm. So right now we're looking at a storm. A little bit of cold air passes through, but it's nothing too significant. We get a pretty significant storm across the northeast. I may be live streaming that depending on how I feel. However, notice behind it a little bit of chill breaks into the northeast. Really, the much of the rest of the country is above average, above average, while these locations are way, possibly way below average with this Arctic blast. And again, another one possibly this weekend. You could see the 516, 520 line right there. So that's some chillier air. However, again, here it is pretty darn warm. We have a giant storm system right here, which has going to be a lot of precip. It's not really going to impact us too greatly. I mean, you can see a lot of rain possibly for the northeast, but nothing really for the Midwest. And look, we have the 540, 32 degree line doing some crazy maneuvers, dipping all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. But this is all it does. It just looks like one little dip, and it's really narrow. It doesn't look, wide and deep. It's very deep but narrow, and that's not even too below average according to the GFS, because the averages at this time of the year are, already pretty chilly. So if you look at the 2 meter temperature anomalies, yeah, it's colder, but it's so thin and narrow, and notice it's way above average across the northeast. Let's go back to the MSLP and precip, and let's continue taking a look at this. We see that one dip. Let's continue going and see what happens. By the way, the European has this dip way stronger and absolutely just amplifies it, times 10. This what it has the GFS right here. So I mean, I guess they're agreeing that there will be some sort of troughing around this time frame. Just the magnitude is just completely off scale. One is way off scale, one is barely on a scale. That's how little it's showing. And then we have, according to the GFS, which European doesn't go out this far, it has a little bit of a trough occurring, and nothing above or nothing below average. This is very above average conditions. What we're seeing right now, right here, December 12th. The 32 degree line all the way at UP, Michigan. That's some above average conditions. We finally get some maybe closer to below, and then we'll see what this does. But this is really close to average. If I were to show you, you could see, I mean, a little bit of warm, a little bit of chill, a little bit of more warmth than chill, really. But it's really nothing to go home about talking about a record-breaking warm December. And again, because the December highs are so, already so low, we don't have to have big cold in order to have a big snowstorm. So that's, I guess, one of the things we need to look out for. A snowstorm could definitely still occur in December, in the, even not in the northern locations, more south than expected, because, the temperatures by December already pretty darn chilly. So we don't have to have a below average, Arctic air blast like we did in November. If you remember the Halloween time snowstorm we had in Chicago, it was just darn way below average temperatures. Now, it had to be like 5 to 10 degrees below average, maybe not even, and we haven't cold enough for snow. So, let's look at this. We again have that big storm. You can see it spiral right there, brings in a little bit of chilly air, especially across the east and southeast. This then kind of gets reinforced on Thursday, but again, this portion of the country, I would say anywhere in this line is going to be pretty darn warm this upcoming week, while the rest will be pretty chilly. It seems like it seems like according to these latest model runs. Notice we get another reinforcing shot. This one could be pretty chilly across the northeast. And then we get that little deep, according to the GFS, but very narrow shot of cool air. You can see it makes all the way to the Gulf Coast states, but up, look at the north. It's just boiling in terms of temperatures. Very, very warm, and that spreads into the eastern United States, and it seems like from the 12th to the 16th, we could be looking at some very warm temperatures, and then it becomes more moderated. But I would say more warm than chill, but really no heat waves other than that little time frame across. Obviously no heat waves in winter, but from about the 12th of December through about the 16th, we could be looking at some substantially above average temperatures. But up until then, it's not looking too great of above average temperatures, other than for the Southwest, which will be above average for a good portion of the time. You can see right there some pretty nice anomalies, probably getting to the 50s and 60s, knowing the plains. Yeah, of course, 50s, 60s. That's how the plains are. They could have literally seen snow up to a day before, a couple of hours before, and then a couple hours later could be seeing in the 60s. Obviously, that's a little bit too drastic, but they could be in the 60s by mid-December, while they just saw a huge snowstorm a couple of days ago. Now let's look at the European. So now the European takes us in for, I love the European. It's just one of the best models out there. It's really the model that is used the most for snowstorms, outbreaks, and he's usually more moderate in terms of stuff. So you can't go too off with this model. But this is why this forecast is just so darn hard to make. Seriously, this model is throwing us in for a darn loop. If we look at the temperatures, it's showing some substantially below for the west and above for the central. That's associated with that big storm that's going on. Then it leaves with a little bit of below average temperatures across the south and east. Basically the same thing what the GFS does. The warmer air spills in with a reinforcing shot maybe by Thursday of chillier air across the northeast. Nothing too drastic. Then by the weekend we see a more significant blast of chillier air across the northeast. But while the rest of the United States in the west gets above average, not ridiculously, kind of like as much above as the east is below. And if we look in the future, look what the European starts doing. It starts gathering by next week, Sunday the 8th. It just starts gathering a whole army of below average temperatures that would be possibly just a polar vortex. Look at that. That thing just swoops into the country. Again, we get -30, -40 below average. This isn't the actual temperatures, but if you look at what it does to the country, it brings a -30 below average, 40 degrees below average across these locations, which is just ridiculous. So, it doesn't show much more cold air behind that, shows some warming, but it does a little bit more with this wave than what the GFS does. And if you look at some of the 2-meter temperature shaded, which is just the actual 2-meter temperature and how warm it will be at the surface, what your thermometer reads. Let's look at this. Sorry, I meant to go on this. Let's see. So again, fairly moderate, and a little bit warmer across the west, a little bit chillier across the east. That's how I would describe this upcoming week. But really, the upcoming weekend looks just confusing. I wouldn't say I expect a polar vortex, but I wouldn't expect record warm conditions either. As again, when the models are just battling out, you could see. The temperatures would be brutal. -17, -19, -10, just a brutal Arctic air mass, very, very cold. However, would this come true? I don't know. I don't think so, as right now the teleconnections are also a little bit lost and confusing, as noticed. So let's look at the AO, the Arctic Oscillation. Basically, what you have to know is whenever it is positive, it's more likely to be warmer across the east and central U.S. and a little bit cooler across the west, while when it's below, it's a little bit more likely to be cold across the east and northern U.S. However, look at this. So these little dashes, I don't know if you can see that, but there's little intervals right here, right there. They go every 15 days. So notice that this thing just goes absolutely spikes really, really, really high. Highest supposedly than it has been since August, which obviously doesn't really create a huge impact on the summer months, but it goes really high. And then you can see some just take it moderately lower, while some just crash it down here. So, you know, that's the difference. If this comes crashing down, we could definitely be looking at a polar vortex-like system, which would be around, you know, perfectly around the 15th, 16th, 14th, which the European does this around the 10th. So a little bit ahead of schedule, but, I mean, you can see that that's pretty significant if that were to occur. You know, and which one will of these models will occur? There's a lot of variance. Let's look at what the... let's actually want to take one more look at this. So, okay. Never mind. Okay, so... yeah, see, at the end, overall, it shows... This is just confusing. Alright, but it's fine as... never mind. That was... My bad. Okay, let's look at the NAO, North Atlantic Oscillation. Very similar, raises it very up. So this is, I guess, indicative of a more ridging pattern. However, we don't even really see that in the next week. It doesn't look too awfully warm or cold. And then look, it kind of goes down, not as much as the AO, but it takes it definitely down closer to where it's closer to average. However, again, it's a tough one, guys. I'm gonna tell you, it's a tough one. As you can see, this really high point, that could mean some warm conditions across the U.S. And okay, let's just eyeball this. This would probably be around the 5th through the 7th of December, when this would be the most most impactful. Let's look at the temperature anomalies using the GFS, which again is a little bit drastic at sometimes. Let's look around that time frame of the 5th and 6th. I mean, yeah, we see some warmer conditions, but I can see what they mean by that. Actually, you could see that there's some above average conditions. Would there be a storm associated with this? I think there would be. A weak one to the north. That makes sense, as the ones that are further to north drag up really warm air all the way up to it. That would produce a little bit of chillier air. But then you could see this is where the models would be potentially disagreeing, where the GFS ones are showing not, you know, they're showing a below average dip, which would send this NAO crashing down. However, you know, the European more version of it would send it crashing down. The GFS would be more level, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Overall, it looks very active, very interesting, and just one heck of a road we have ahead of us. This December is going to be very difficult, very tough to make. Because it's going to be so tough and so difficult to make, I don't think I'll release a December winter forecast, as I feel that would do more bad than good. It would just confuse everyone, as I'm pretty lost myself in terms of what's coming up this December. If you want a quick rundown of what I think will happen, you know, have low confidence in this, but what I think, I think above average temperatures are more likely than below average across the U.S. overall. To what extent, that is just absolutely unknown. I mean, we could be looking at a absolutely very warm December like we did last year, or we could be looking at one that's a little bit of cold in the east, a little bit warmer in the west, and a little bit of neutral in the central. I mean, it's so vague. This is one of my least confident forecasts. I'm signing off. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys in the next episode. See ya. Bye.